Does it feel like everyone is after you? Are you suspecting that people in your family, at your job, are conspiring against you? Are people in your neighborhood harassing you? How do these things work? How is it that all these people are in on this little hunt down that you're experiencing? Well, there's a lot of ways that this can work out, a lot of ways that it can manifest. Some people are experiencing it, in specific areas of their life. They might only be experiencing workplace mobbing, and that's obvious. You're dealing with a social dynamic, and you are dealing with people who have picked you as a scapegoat. There's a lot of stress that goes along with work environments, and a lot of times, there's a lot of awkwardity in the social mechanisms of a workplace, and you have a wide variety of people. And I've mentioned before that people do bond over that type of behavior. They will literally, conspire against someone, and that's how, they bond. That's how, they get along with each other. And it's kind of a system to where, they have, control. That's always involved in harassment. When somebody is getting bullied, when there's a little conspiracy, a little game that's being played, people are getting off on it. And a lot of times these people are out of control in one or, many areas of their life. You might only be experiencing harassment in a family situation. That's kind of the same thing. Okay. You're dealing with that social dynamic. And, people have picked their victim. Okay. And don't get me wrong. Does that mean that these people are not influenced spiritually? No, it doesn't mean that. Okay. Just because you're dealing with a mechanism, okay, which would be the social dynamic, doesn't mean that there isn't spiritual influences behind it. So if you're out there and you're like, "Oh, I'm a victim of gang stalking," don't be telling me that I'm just a victim of a social dynamic and I'm an easy target. I'm not saying that. Okay. I mean, that could be true in a lot of ways. And, sometimes those things play out that way. And there are, even spiritual involvements in something like that. Okay. So don't think that I'm not, acknowledging that as gang stalking. I'm just saying that there are different ways that these things can manifest. And there are different ways to, diagnose what you're dealing with. Okay. I think that, especially in a family situation, when you are dealing with that, you're dealing with pure evil. Okay. When you can't treat your own flesh and blood, with respect, that's obvious evil. That's something that's obviously spiritual. In the more extreme cases of gang stalking, you have the other manifestations, and that's, street theater by total strangers, and other things that you might get, braided to, an extent where it's just beyond explanation. I mean, I can see, dealing with traffic. I deal with traffic all day. Okay. If I thought every senior citizen that cut me off in traffic was a gang stalker, I would have to, go get my head checked. Okay. Because those guys they're not even there. They will kill you. Okay. But when you're getting braided or something like that, or when people are pulling in front of you and hit their brakes, and it's more than an homiletic, that's harassment. That's gang stalking. And, when people are using that type of attack, when you're getting that personal information, or there are synchronicities that are just beyond any other explanation, and you're using a very strict criteria, well, that's spiritual as well, in my opinion. And even if people have gotten together and conspired, they're in collusion, which can happen. I've talked about that in the video Places and Faces. They're being influenced spiritually as well. Okay, so you have to know that. Because if you're out there and you are exclusively limiting, your diagnosis of this situation to conscious collusion, you are missing the bigger picture. And you're gonna be reading into things at that point, and you're gonna make assumptions. You're gonna form a proposition that's based on that type of syllogistic reasoning, and that I've seen before. When people get attacked in all those different areas, what do they always assume? They always assume there's some type of government plot because of the amount of resources that would have to go into this. And then they come up with all kinds of other, basically ideas about all the things that are happening to them. And it's based off that syllogistic reasoning. It's based off that proposition that just because it would take a lot of manpower and a lot of resources, that it has to be a government. Now, it could be. That can definitely happen. We know that. But you have to look at the spiritual influences there. And, again, it doesn't really matter what type of manifestation you're dealing with. You could be dealing with all of them, or you could be dealing with one. But you have to know, what the objective is. I've talked a lot about psychiatry and how there's a, more than strange coincidence, that links this type of harassment to the criteria of diagnosing someone with a mental disease. Okay, I think it's more than suspicious. But let's just take a look at what happens to people that experience this kind of harassment. What happens to them? They become paranoid, right? They start to read into things. It's inevitable, and I've talked about that, where you have to forgive yourself. You have to watch your criteria. You start to speculate, as I talked about, when you have that syllogistic reasoning, and you start to assume and form propositions that, could have nothing to do with what you're dealing with. And that, a lot of times, that goes into that delusion of grandeur, right? The persecutory delusion. What am I saying? I'm saying that the objective of this type of harassment, and it's very effective, is to cause people to basically kind of go nuts. It is designed to change the way they process information, and to make them dysfunctional, and put them in a type of psychosis. And I've talked about this as well, that a lot of times, due to the fact that this is spiritually influenced, people will get into substance abuse, and that just it's like putting this whole thing on steroids. So, you really have to step back and look at your situation and say to yourself, how do I remedy this? Is looking at a bunch of different, online material about all this stuff healthy? Or do I need to, kind of balance this out? And since, the spiritual aspect is obviously there, and it can't be ruled out, in my opinion, what are you doing about that? Are you drawing near to God? Are you studying good material? Are you spending a lot of time, trying to renew your mind? And that's huge. That has to do with you. You can't control what other people are doing, but you can, you can choose to try to use this, right, as a way for you to improve yourself and your future. There are a lot of resources out there, and you have to ask yourself, am I taking advantage of that? And I'm gonna suggest some material. Andrew Farley on YouTube, he's light years ahead of anybody out there that I have found yet. Now, a lot of people have a niche, they have a little area that they get into. Soteriology 101 with Leighton Flowers is great for understanding, salvation, which is what soteriology is. And a lot of times he goes after the Calvinists and stuff like that. So it can become a bit of an echo chamber, but it's crucial. He's very good at dealing with that stuff. If you're looking for a Jewish, type of scholar, you could check out Michael Brown. He's more of a charismatic, but, he really gets into some of that stuff, and he's very interesting. And, there's a lot of others out there as well. You have the Provisionist Network, and that's kind of along the lines of what Leighton Flowers is doing as well. Those guys are very good. Michael Winger on YouTube, great material. And he's got a lot of material too, by the way. I mean, just those guys alone, you could, spend, thousands of hours probably studying Beyond the Fundamentals with Kevin Thompson. You have to kind of watch out for some of the pre-tribulation rapture stuff, in my opinion. I'm not gonna, shoot him down too much, but he has got the scientific inductive method of study down, with the exception to probably dispensationalism. But great stuff. You are in a spiritual battle, and if you are not tending to that, if you're not drawing near to God, if you're not trying to renew your mind, well, you're wasting your time, literally. This whole thing has been allowed, the futility that the world has been subjected to, for a reason. And it's not really just to find all the answers out there. It's not just, to know the Bible front to back. It's to know Christ. It's to know God himself. That's the point. And if this whole ordeal that you're going through doesn't lead you to that, they are gonna get you. They will. And, just to bring up the substance abuse issue, I've seen some videos out there from some of the people I check out, who's watching and commenting. There's literally no evidence for anyone doing anything to these people at all. And I've mentioned before that, meth psychosis, other types of chemicals can cause your brain to, get to that place where you're connecting dots that are just not there. You have to be honest with yourself, even if it's been a year or two, or, since you've touched that kind of stuff, it can still have lingering effects. And you have to have a very strict criteria. I knew one gentleman that had a serious problem with that. And, I had to tell him, you need to get rid of that stuff. Nothing is going on. The occult is not after you. Okay, you're dealing with something that's demonic, but all these other things are literally, just delusions. And they're probably caused by drugs. Covert drugging is one of the ways these people drive, their targets crazy. It helps induce that psychosis. So, it has to be recognized. And the spiritual side of this whole thing, it can't be ruled out. You need to be responsible for that. Guys, be good to yourselves. Be safe.